Coming up, on this week's IndigiPolitics, John Tahsuda discusses the latest at the southern border and Republican vice presidential picks. A community college in Arizona is fast-tracking workers into the semiconductor industry. Plus, we continue our coverage on the centennial of the Indian Citizenship Act, with learning how it connects to Native voting rights. Next on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amidawa Hopa. Thank you for joining us. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. We start today in North Carolina, where state lawmakers have proposed a new law that would make it easier for developers to bulldoze archaeological sites. In the coastal town of Cedar Point, real estate company Cedar Point Developers wanted to build more beach houses. Construction was paused, however, when archaeologists discovered a Native American burial ground believed to be up to 3,000 years old. It's being hailed as the most significant site found since the 1990s. State lawmakers discussed the proposed bill this week that would weaken regulations by allowing builders to continue working when an archaeological site has been found. The bill is now under review by a state Senate committee. Well, Catholic bishops nationwide plan to apologize to Native Americans for cultural harm and make changes around ministry. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops meeting next week includes ministry plans that apologizes to Catholic Indigenous communities for a, quote, history of trauma caused in part by bishops abandoning the way of God and the church. It proposes a way forward that takes into account the unique cultural needs of these communities, as well as provides an updated pastoral plan to address the concerns of Catholic Indigenous communities. The last time the conference formally addressed these communities was in 1977. We continue our Native vote coverage now in South Dakota, where two well-known state lawmakers have suffered big losses. Votes from last week's primaries show mother-son duo Tamara St. John and Tyler Tordston lost their races, joining 12 other Republicans who will not advance to November's general election. Both of the Sisseton-Wahpeton-Oyate state representatives finished the race, coming in third. I spoke to Representative Tordston about the outcome and asked if he would run for office in the future.
We'll just see if there's an opening that makes sense, or if there's other ways to serve. I won't rule anything out, but I'm going to make sure that I finish up my term. Yet I still got a good 6 months here of impact that we can do. Like I said, I got 10 bills signed into law. I got 5 just this last session. And so July 1 is when all of our bills go into effect. And so making sure that the implementation goes smoothly for all of those.
Data from South Dakota's Secretary of State shows voter turnout was at an all-time low at just 17%. We close our headlines today with a note for the kids from WNBA star Alyssa Peely. The Samoan and Inupiaq rookie plays for the Minnesota Lynx and was recently named a Nike N7 ambassador, which is a program that celebrates Native heritage. We caught up with Peely earlier this week during a game against the Phoenix Mercury. She had this message for Indigenous youth.
Keep chasing your dreams, and I hope that me being here in this position does a lot to impact and kind of open that pathway for you. And I'm always somebody who's going to support my people, and it's cultures where if you see one person win, then everybody's winning. So I carry that with pride, and I just hope everybody continues to just not settle, and no matter what culture you come from. So it's hard, but if you believe in yourself and you have a good support system, then you can find a way.
President Joe Biden signed major executive orders to address the crisis at the southern border. Indigenous members of Congress, Tom Cole and Mary Peltola, face steep competitions at the polls this year. And have the odds changed for North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum on his quest to become Donald Trump's vice president? Here to talk about all of this is regular contributor John Tahsuda for this week's IndigiPolitics. Welcome back to the newscast, John.
Thanks for having me again.
So Biden announced major executive orders on the border. Can you tell us more about this?
So a little bit. The border is obviously a thorny issue, and I always take a step back also and sort of try to look through the lens that we have as Native folks and think about how important it would have been if we could have had a little more say over our border control, 300 or 400 years ago, and look at it real bit from that perspective and how important it is ultimately to the sovereignty of our tribes and of our nation, and how access through the border, that it's not in any way controlled by our governments, has an impact on us. And so I think it's interesting, the orders that the president put in really, I think, are short term. I would even call them fixes, really trying to just put a control over the number of illegal entries that are coming through the country over a short time frame, and not any kind of comprehensive fix, of course. That would take legislation, and that has proven, regardless of Republican or Democrat administration, has proven, almost impossible for Congress, well, to this point, impossible for Congress to achieve. So without that, I'm not clear on how much more that he can do, to try to do it. Both he and former President Trump tried several things, during their time in office, and didn't have a great deal of success once those decisions were challenged in the federal courts. So I think, the ultimate solution lies with Congress, and they're going to have to step up. I think that until they do that, it continues to have a huge impact on our brother and sister nations on the borders. And I had the opportunity a few years ago to see some of that impact, and it's really harmful to our communities and harmful to our environmental communities. The people that come through there, really have little regard for the environmental situation that the tribe is supposed to be the steward of. But if they don't have control of who's coming in and out, then it really impacts their ability on the ground to take care of their people, their community, and really their land.
And as you said, John, it does rely on Congress to address through legislation. And so the bipartisan border security bill, which is supported by Democrats, was blocked by Senate Republicans again in May. And with the recent executive orders, it seems that only Democrats and President Joe Biden are serious about border security and about addressing the crisis at the border. And so I'm curious what your analysis is on that.
So this is the challenge with this particular issue, is you could think of it in sovereignty terms, right? Since it deals with the borders and the sovereignty of the nation, that inherently brings in politics into the discussion. And so that has been, in some ways, the real challenge. Over the last few decades, there have been several bipartisan proposals that have made it a long way, but it seems like every time that happens, there is a political sort of point that it reaches that it can't overcome. And in this case, we have a real intense election, and the agreement to get over the hump on something like this, even though it is bipartisan, there's a central group who can't reach final decision, and they feel like if they can wait until after the election and it goes their direction, they can get the upper hand on those last couple of points that they want into the policies that are going to be enacted. And so, and again, this is not the first time. It seems to have happened every time. We're getting close, and then an election or something on the political front kind of steps in front of that final achievement.
And the longest serving Indigenous member of Congress is Tom Cole, and he is facing a serious contender with serious money in this year's election. And so I'm curious, could Cole lose his seat this election?
I think that it's all so first off, it's always possible. And we like to think, and I'm a native Oklahoman. My tribe is in Tom Cole's district, right? And so we have a great deal of respect, and he has been a great voice for the tribes in our district. But just as importantly, he represents a state, Oklahoma State district in Congress, and so he does a great job for that. But these are really uncertain political times, and you just never know when these elections come up. Both candidates, have I think probably the financial resources. It's really how they're getting the message out. The challenger that he is facing, is an interesting guy. He's actually from Illinois, moved to Texas 2 years ago, and now wants to have an Oklahoma congressional seat. So, in the old days, they called those carpetbaggers. I don't know what they call them now. But he seems to certainly have his own financial resources that he's pouring into this race. And so whenever any candidate has the ability to get their message out on TV, radio, et cetera, it's a serious challenge that you have to take very seriously when you're an official like Tom. Of course, we're hopeful that Tom will win, but we're all taking it very seriously.
And another Indigenous member of Congress who is being challenged is Mary Peltola in Alaska, who has a slew of candidates who are running against her in the open primary in Alaska. And again, how could this impact her reelection?
Well, so Alaska is such an interesting place now that they have this ranked choice, process for elections, and so in many ways that probably helps her out differently than a traditional sort of primary, two-party primaries and two-party campaigns. So that's probably helpful. In some regard, you think she's always swimming upstream, so she's personally very popular. I mean, who can't like Mary? I mean, she's just a wonderful person. But in the politics side of things, she's in a deeply red state, a state that voted heavily for President Trump in 2020. So again, these are always challenges. They're always challenging campaigns for folks like her. And I would say, not to get too political, but I don't think her party in Congress has helped her that much either.
Well, it seems that we have lost John. So thank you once again for joining IndigiPolitics.
Across the United States, billions of dollars are being invested into bolstering the semiconductor manufacturing industry. In Phoenix, Arizona, TSMC and Intel have teamed up with the local community colleges to meet the demand of workers needed. Our Daniel Herrera has more on this story.
It's a program designed for folks that have not completed their two-year degree yet.
At Maricopa Community Colleges in the greater Phoenix area, people are now able to fast-track their way into a new career.
A lot of these companies would never consider anyone that didn't have a two-year degree to even hire. And because of the great need with the new plants that are being built and the economic development that's going on, that the companies are reconsidering and they're hiring folks to entry-level positions.
MCC currently offers 31 degrees and certificates that directly or indirectly support the semiconductor manufacturing industry. One of the newest additions is a 10-day Quick Start program where students learn the process of manufacturing semiconductor chips and are ready to work once they pass the course. One of the students, Aiden Johnson, told me this is a great course if you like working with your hands.
I learned how to work with the tools and the different measurements and stuff to do, because I'm like really hands-on.
In this class, students get dressed in a bunny suit, a garment that covers a majority of a person's body. From there, they learn the information necessary to work in manufacturing semiconductors.
Really, they're learning kind of bringing them up to a baseline understanding of some of the things they need to do at an entry-level job. They need to learn how to use hand tools. We talk to them about electricity, pneumatics, hydraulics. We have a whole section on model-based problem solving. We have some mock-ups of little factories that we have here that we demonstrate how to run it, and then it'll have a problem, and then they'll have to go through the model-based problem solving in order to figure out what's actually wrong with it.
This exponential growth in semiconductor manufacturing comes after President Joe Biden signed the CHIPS and Science Act. The bill provides more than $52 billion in semiconductor research, development, manufacturing, and workforce development. And for Arizona, that means having two of the largest semiconductor manufacturing factories being built here, which means the need for more workers.
I think we're going to see it more in the next year or two when a lot of these factories, instead of being in the construction phase, start going into the production phase where they actually need the people to work inside the factories. We'll see the hiring pick up when it comes to that.
Daniel Herrera, ICT News.
Hotter summers, longer pollen seasons, and record rainfalls. These changing patterns are putting our health and the health of those we love at risk. So, communities around the country are taking steps to prepare. State, local, and tribal health officials are using the Building Resilience Against Climate Effects framework developed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, called BRACE for short. The 5-step process is used to develop strategies and programs that help communities prepare a coordinated community response to the health effects of a changing climate. Step 1 is identifying what climate effects are relevant locally, how those might lead to new or expanded health threats, and who is most at risk. The next step is to calculate expected impacts on the local population, and then rank the severity of each threat. This is called projecting the disease burden. What it does is it helps health officials tackle the worst risks first. Step 3 is to identify ways the community can intervene to prevent or reduce health effects. For example, health officials who are expecting more high heat days might consider if it would be more effective to open community cooling centers or to collaborate on housing and development plans to protect vulnerable residents. Then in step 4, health officials work with other community sectors to develop and implement their plan. For example, health officials may work with city planners to reduce the impact of urban heat islands, or with broadcast meteorologists to alert people to prepare for extreme weather. Step 5 is evaluation. Health officials assess the success of their adaptation plans and gather lessons learned to apply for future activities. These 5 steps in the BRACE framework are designed to be flexible and responsive to local needs. Any community, whether urban, suburban, rural, or tribal, can use BRACE to prepare for the local health impacts of a changing climate. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/climate and health.
Just over 100 years ago, on June 2nd, 1924, President Calvin Coolidge signed into law the Indian Citizenship Act, making Indigenous peoples citizens of the United States. ICT's Pauly Denetclaw has this report on an issue that lingered and lingers still about its connection to Native voting rights.
The act was brief, stating in part that, quote, all non-citizen Indians born within the territorial limits of the United States are hereby declared to be citizens of the United States. It was met with varied reactions from nations that had few choices.
Their lives were completely controlled by Indian agents on the reservation. They needed the agent's permission to leave the reservation, to spend their own money. And so citizenship was a step toward reestablishing both individual Indian agency over their own lives and equally important, the tribal authority. And we've used our citizenship over the years in ways that re-empowered our communities.
Many Native people saw citizenship as the final act of colonization, which in many respects it most certainly was. One of the points I make, though, is that the options in front of them were very few. Effectively, they had the choice not of citizenship and sovereignty, but between the abject poverty of reservation communities caused by white legislation and the failures of federal policy, or assimilation into the white mainstream. And that was the range of debate.
The Citizenship Act is often associated with voting rights, but barriers remain still a quarter of the way through the 21st century. And legal challenges to Native voting rights didn't end until 1962.
We know it still took decades for our people to fully have that right to vote. And we know we still have a long way to go because we still have voting rights issues yet today.
In 2020, the Native American Rights Fund released a report, Obstacles at Every Turn, that details ways Native voters are disenfranchised. One answer, say advocates, is new federal legislation.
When you look across the globe, Indigenous peoples are standing up from Central and South America to New Zealand, right? That they are standing up and saying that we deserve a place at this table. We are the original peoples of these lands, and we will not be cast aside in the process of decision making. And so when I think about this, I think what's almost immediately on the horizon is passing the most comprehensive Native American Voting Rights Act federally that we've ever seen, correcting many of the challenges that we've seen throughout this process. It means equity and parity in elected office. We have 350 Native elected leaders currently. We need roughly about 17,000 to reach basic representational parity based on population.
Either way, a new generation is ready to continue the fight.
That is what's continuing to inspire me, knowing that the work we're doing is not in vain, and that in fact we're carrying on that fire to the next generation, because these issues aren't going to go away. We've been fighting for decades, for centuries, for you name it, land, our right to be human, but voting rights, so much more, and it's going to continue.
Pauly Denetclaw, ICT News.
A ohe pau ka ike I ka hanau ho'okahi. A ohe pau ka ike I ka hanau ho'okahi. All knowledge is not taught in the same school. A ohe pau ka ike I ka hanau ho'okahi. All knowledge is not taught in the same school.
A Navajo man is bottling up the heat in Phoenix. Michael John is the founder of Navajo Mike's Southwestern-style barbecue sauce. It's featured in Tokabe Indigenous Marketplace. Take a look.
My name is Michael John, and I am the owner and founder of Navajo Mike's. I think I was 14, picked up a job at my buddy's dad's restaurant as a dishwasher. You know, I bugged him forever, I needed a job, just wanted to be in it. It wasn't me personally being like, I want to be a chef or anything. I just, wanted a job, and I just kind of embraced it and slowly learned, to cook. And then he was like, let's put you on the line now, and started taking that in, and then eventually going to a different restaurant and just start growing as someone that can cook all these foods, and just, kind of fell into it. And I, started loving it and just embracing the whole culture of it. And just took it by storm. And just, next thing I know, I get management positions, a sous chef job, and then, head chef, and then became an executive chef. So it just snowballed. And now, I just, 15 years later, here I am. The AIC reached out to me and were like, hey, we like your product. It's an Indigenous product. We want you to check out our company. And we have this seal that shows that you're certified, authentic, made, produced by American Indians. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. And so I was like, so they see this and like, they're noticing me. I'm like, who else is gonna okay, this is something. This is someone's looking at me. So I was just like, okay, I gotta take it more seriously. So yeah, that's where it started, man. That's where I liked it. The native marketplace means, I think, big opportunity for everyone, any Indigenous brand. I mean, I think it's just a stepping stone to something great that will happen very soon and continue to grow. And I'm very appreciative of, giving us the opportunity to sell in their marketplace. And I see it becoming something great, and I'm very appreciative and thankful to have it. My whole thing, I hope within the next 2-3 years I can start hiring people, and I definitely want to keep it local and reach out to any one that wants to partner with us and have Indigenous people come and help out, stuff like that. Being Navajo, it's just being proud of where you come from, your heritage and the culture, and especially the people in the community. The community is we're very focused on our community here.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.